What's up everybody? Welcome to a new Let's Play. This game is called The Rapture is coming and you'll be forcibly removed from your home. It's that thing there. That's what it is. This is what the game is. Basically, the Rapture's coming. The whole earth is gonna be engulfed in nothingness, and you gotta run. It's inevitable. You just have to accept that everything's going to end and you can't do anything about it. And just experience the terror. I don't even know what to say about this.
The natural leadership, which with my uncle procured the instruments from the laboratories of Brown University and the Cranston Street Armory, and instinctively assumed direction of our venture, was a marvelous commentary on the potential vitality and resilience of a man of 81. Elihu Whipple had lived according to the hygienic laws he had preached as a physician, and but for what happened later, would be here in full vigor today.
I don't know what that means. I'm guessing these are like sound bites. Seeing this the other day, I was like, I need to play this because the concept looked awesome.
What I heard in my youth about the shunned house was merely that people died there in alarmingly great numbers. That, I was told, was why the original owners had moved out some 20 years after building the place. It was plainly unhealthy, perhaps because of the dampness and fungus growth in the cellar, the general sickish smell, the drafts of the hallway, or the quality of the well and pump water.
Oh, this is like a creepy old house. Oh, I don't know.
In short, it seemed to my uncle and me that an incontrovertible array of facts pointed to some lingering influence in the shunned house, traceable to one or another of the ill-favored French settlers of 2 centuries before, and still operative through rare and unknown laws of atomic and electronic motion. That the family had possessed an abnormal affinity for outer circles of entity, dark spheres which for normal folk held only repulsion and terror, their recorded history seemed to prove.
I have no idea what she's talking about.
To declare that we were not nervous on that rainy night of watching would be an exaggeration both gross and ridiculous. We were not, as I've said, in any sense childishly superstitious, but scientific study and reflection had taught us that the known universe of 3 dimensions embraces the merest fraction of the whole cosmos of substance and energy. In this case, an overwhelming preponderance of evidence from numerous authentic sources pointed to the tenacious existence of certain forces of great power, and so far as the human point of view is concerned, exceptional malignancy.
I'm guessing that there is, she's saying that there is something out there, like there's a god or we have been judged. No, someone help me. The music and the organ and these red things, what's going on? This is like Slender. What's this? It's just a well. Alright. Whatever floats your boat. What's with this fog? See if something jump scares me. It does bring an interesting question to mind. What would you do if the Rapture was here? I don't know.
West of Arkham, the hills rise wild, and there are valleys with deep woods that no axe has ever cut. There are dark, narrow glens where the trees slope fantastically, and where thin brooklets trickle without ever having caught the glint of sunlight. On the gentler slopes there are farms, ancient and rocky, with squat, moss-coated cottages brooding eternally over old New England secrets in the lee of great ledges. But these are vacant now, the wide chimneys crumbling and the shingled sides bulging perilously beneath low gambrel roofs. The old folk have gone away, and foreigners do not like to live here. French Canadians have tried it, Italians have tried it, and the Poles have come and departed. It is not because of anything that can be seen or heard or handled, but because of something that is imagined. The place is not good for the imagination. It does not bring restful dreams at night. It must be this which keeps the foreigners away, for old Ammy Peace has never told them of anything he recalls from the strange days. When I went into the hills and vales to survey for the new reservoir, they told me the place was evil.
What's going on? I don't know what any of these people are talking about. What? It's frightening. I feel like someone's just gonna jump out in the lightning. So funny. So funny.
It all began, old Ammy said, with the meteorite. Before that time, there had been no wild legends at all since the witch trials, and even these western woods were not feared half so much as the small island on the Miskatonic, where the devil held court beside a curious altar, older than the Indians. These were not haunted woods, and their fantastic dusk was never terrible till these strange days. Then there had come that white noontide cloud, that string of explosions in the air, and that pillar of smoke from the valley far in the wood. By night, all Arkham had heard of the great rock that fell out of the sky and bedded itself in the ground beside the well at the Nahum Gardner place. Nahum had come to town to tell people about the stone. They had dropped in on Ammy Pierce's on the way. Ammy was 40 then, and all the queer things were fixed very strongly in his mind. He and his wife had gone with 3 professors from Miskatonic University, who hastened on the next morning to see the weird visitor from unknown stellar space.
Mind is blown.
The most merciful thing in the world, I think, is the inability of the human mind to correlate all of its contents. We live on a placid island of ignorance in the midst of black seas of infinity, and it was not meant that we should voyage far. The sciences, each straining in its own direction, have hitherto harmed us little. But someday, piecing together of disassociated knowledge will open up such terrifying vistas of reality in a more frightful position therein, that we shall either go mad from the revelation, or will flee from the deadly light into the peace and safety of a new dark age. I shall never knowingly supply a link in so hideous a chain. I think that the professor too intended to keep silent regarding the part that he knew, and that he would have destroyed his notes had not sudden death seized him.
What notes? Have they opened a black hole or something? It's all their fault. Humanity fucked itself.
My knowledge of the thing began in the winter of 1927 with the death of my granduncle, George Gamble Angel, Professor Emeritus of Semitic Languages in Brown University, Providence, Rhode Island. Professor Angel was widely known as an authority on ancient inscriptions and had frequently been resorted to by the heads of prominent museums. So his passing at the age of 92 may have been recalled by many. And as my granduncle's heir and executor, for he died a childless widower, I was expected to go over his papers with some thoroughness, and for that purpose moved his entire set of files and boxes to my quarters in Boston. The first half of the principal manuscript told a very peculiar tale. It appears that on March 1st, 1925, a thin, dark young man of neurotic and excited aspect had called upon Professor Angel bearing a singular clay bas-relief, which was then exceedingly damp and fresh. His card bore the name of Henry Anthony Wilcox, and he called himself psychically hypersensitive. The sculptor abruptly asked for the benefit of the host's archaeological knowledge in identifying the hieroglyphics on the bas relief. He said, "It is new indeed, for I made it last night in a dream of strange cities. And dreams are older than brooding Tyre, or the contemplative Sphinx, or the garden-girdled Babylon."
They had uncovered what seemed to be the side of a large colored globule embedded in the substance. The color, which resembled some of the bands in the meteor's strange spectrum, was almost impossible to describe. And it was only by analogy that they called it color at all. Its texture was glossy, and upon tapping it, it appeared to premise both brittleness and hollowness. One of the professors gave it a smart blow with a hammer, and it burst with a nervous little pop. Nothing was emitted, and all trace of the thing vanished with the puncturing. It left behind a hollow, spherical space about 3 inches across, and all thought it probable that others would be discovered as the enclosing substance wasted away.
Such a thing was surely not a physical or biochemical impossibility in the light of newer science, which includes the theories of relativity and intraatomic action. One might easily imagine an alien nucleus of substance or energy, formless or otherwise, kept alive by imperceptible or immaterial subtractions from the life force or bodily tissues and fluids of other and more palpably living things into which it penetrates, and with whose fabric it sometimes completely merges itself. It might be actively hostile, or it might be dictated merely by blind motives of self-preservation. In any case, such a monster must of necessity be in our scheme of things an anomaly, and an intruder whose extirpation forms a primary duty, with every man not an enemy to the world's life, health, and sanity.
Oh god. Oh shit. It's definitely got bigger. That is really shit. What is this over here? I'll be honest, I have no idea what any of these guys are talking about. All I know is that it's getting bigger. I guess I have to know what happens. Obviously, each color is telling an individual story of something.
Had I, in full hideous fact, been drawn back to a pre-human world of 150 million years ago, in those dark, baffling days of the amnesia? Had my present body been the vehicle of a frightful, alien consciousness from Paleogean gulfs of time? Had I, as the captive mind of those shambling horrors, indeed known that accursed city of stone in its primordial heyday, and wriggled down those familiar corridors in the lonesome shape of my captor? Were those tormenting dreams of more than 20 years ago the offspring of stark, monstrous memories?
They're speaking in metaphors, and it's hard to...
My name is Nathaniel Wingate Peasley, and those who recall the newspaper tales of a generation back, or the letters and articles in psychological journals 6 or 7 years ago, will know who and what I am. The press was filled with the details of my strange amnesia in 1908 until 1913. It was on Thursday, May 14th, 1908 that the queer amnesia came. The thing was quite sudden, though later I realized that certain brief, glimmering visions of several hours previous, chaotic visions which disturbed me greatly because they are so unprecedented, must have formed premonitory symptoms.
What is that? Oh, it's a tree.
And I had a singular feeling.
Whew. I thought it was something on the roof.
Someone else was trying to get possession of my thoughts. The collapse occurred around 10:20 a.m. I slumped down unconscious in my chair, in a stupor from which no one could arouse me. Nor did my rightful faculties again look out upon the daylight of our normal world for 5 years, 4 months, and 13 days. It It is of course from others that I've learned what followed.
We had amnesia for 5 years. When he woke up, I guess he was wheelchair bound for like 5 years.
At 3 a.m. May 15th, my eyes opened and I began to speak. But before long, the doctors in my family were thoroughly frightened by the trend of my expression and language. It was clear that I had no remembrance of my identity and my past, though for some reason I seemed anxious to conceal this lack of knowledge. My eyes gazed strangely at the persons around me, and the flexions of my facial muscles were altogether unfamiliar. Even my speech seemed awkward and foreign. I used my vocal organs clumsily and gropingly, and my diction had a curiously stilted quality, as if I had laboriously learned the English language from books. The pronunciation was barbarously alien, whilst the idiom seemed to include both scraps of curious anachronism and expressions of a wholly incomprehensible cast.
I'm really intrigued, but I'm freaked the fuck out. Y'all freaked out? I'm freaked out. Oh man.
The essence was always the same. A person of keen thoughtfulness, seized with a strange secondary life, and leading for a greater or lesser period, an utterly alien existence typified at first by vocal and bodily awkwardness, and later by a wholesale acquisition of scientific, historic, artistic, and anthropological knowledge. An acquisition carried on with the feverish zest and with a wholly abnormal absorptive power. Then a sudden return of the rightful consciousness, intermittently plagued ever after with vague, unplaceable dreams, suggesting fragments of some hideous memory elaborately blotted out. I come now to the crucial and most difficult part of my narrative. All the more difficult because I cannot be quite certain of its reality. At times I feel uncomfortably sure that I was not dreaming or deluded. And it is this feeling, in view of the stupendous implications which the objective truth of my experience would raise, which impels me to make this record. Primal myth and modern delusion join in their assumption that mankind is the only one, perhaps at least, of the highly evolved and dominant races of this planet's long and largely unknown career. Things of inconceivable shape, they implied, had reared towers to the sky and delved into every secret of nature before the first amphibian forebear of man had crawled out of the hot sea 300 million years ago. Some had come down from the stars, a few were as old as the cosmos itself, and others had arisen swiftly from terrene germs as far behind the first germs of our life cycle, as those germs are behind ourselves. Spans of thousands of millions of years and linkages to other galaxies and universes were freely spoken of. Indeed, there is no such thing as time in this humanly accepted sense. But most of the tales and impressions concern a relatively late race of a queer and intricate shape, resembling no life form known to science, which had lived till only 50 million years before the advent of man. This, they indicated, was the greatest race of all, because it alone had conquered the secret of time. It had learned all things that ever were known, or ever would be known on the earth, through the power of its keener minds to project themselves into the past and future.
What the fuck?
Even through gulfs of millions of years, and study the lore of every age. From the accomplishments of this race arose all legends and prophets, including those in human mythology. With this eon-embracing knowledge, the great race chose from every era and life form such thoughts, arts, and processes as might suit its own nature and situation. Knowledge of the past, secured through a kind of mind casting outside the recognized senses, was harder to glean than knowledge of the future. the latter case, the course was easier and more material. With suitable mechanical aid, the mind would project itself forward in time, feeling its dim, extrasensory way until it approached the desired period. Then, after preliminary trials, it would seize on the best discoverable representative of the highest of that period's life forms. It would enter the organism's brain and set up therein its own vibrations, while the displaced mind would strike back to the period of the displacer, remaining in the latter's body till a reverse process was set up. The projected mind, in the body of the organism of the future, would then pose as a member of the race whose outward form it wore, learning as quickly as possible all that can be learned from the chosen age and its massed information and techniques. Meanwhile, the displaced mind, thrown back to the displacer's age and body, would be drained of all its knowledge by trained questioners.
What the fuck? What the fuck is happening?
The Great Race's members were immense, rugose cones 10 feet high, and with head and other organs attached to foot-thick, distensible limbs spreading from the apexes. They spoke by the click and scraping of huge paws or claws attached to the end of the two of their forelimbs, and they walked by the expansion and contraction of a viscous layer attached to their vast, 10-foot bases. When the captive's mind's amazement and resentment had worn off, and when, assuming that it had come from a body vastly different from the Great Race's, it had lost its heart.
Oh, wow. Oh, that was superb. Ah. Whew. That was nice, man. Shit. That was a really cool experience. I mean, that's so different than anything I've ever played. You just wanted to keep going. That was so weird. Whew. Oh wow. That was so cool. I'm speechless. I can't speak. Oh man. Well guys, that's it. That's the game. That was so cool. Might replay it to get a full grip of what they were talking about. They were basically talking about not being alone in the universe and but humans not knowing what's really out there and stuff. I guess that's the theme of it. That was so cool. Anyway guys, thanks for watching this episode of this game. The Rapture is here. You'll forcibly be removed from your home. Awesome title, awesome game. Thanks for watching guys. I will catch you all in a new indie game coming soon. Bye. Oh no. We make such a mess. It's unfucking believable how messy we are. Making that joke. Oh, you've got to be kidding. Let me just right here. There it is. Yeah, nuke it. How about some subs? Oh, I hate my life. Oh, what did you say to me? Yeah, you call the police. Anyway. What is this? Take your frying pan away. It's all your fault.